All right, welcome everyone today to Building and Building. Today we are going to be building and building in 3 different ways. So the tools that you will need today is you need a rolling pin, and you can use pencils if you want guide sticks, but in general, the pencil is going to make too thick a wall for how much clay you have. So I'm sure you're going to have to freehand it. You'll need your knife if you have your knife, and a bowl of water. I didn't mention a brush is really useful when doing the building. So a brush with a bowl of water works really well. And we're going to try 3 different methods. One, I'll show you how to do it, but you won't be able to do today, but you can do the other 2. So today we're going to make buildings. And like you could see in my beginning here, I had the basics of a little brick tower. And this is going to be the most time consuming, where you make all the little individual components. But let's go ahead and get started. And what we're going to do is grab a chunk of your clay. If when you squeeze it, if you roll it into a ball and you squeeze it, and see how it held together, so that means you're at pretty good consistency. If it really cracks a lot, see as I squeeze it more and more, so it starts to crack like that instead of staying together, you can add a little bit more water. And if you ever need to add more water to this, I just take it and dip it in my water. And I use my fingers and I just fold it. That makes it a little bit softer. That makes it easier to work. You can fold it a bunch of times. Adding more water in, add more water in, getting that all worked in. Now we'll roll it into a ball. Right, it made a nicer ball. We'll squeeze it. It's holding it together its shape, right? A little bit better. See how that didn't crack nearly as much after we added some water. All right, well anyway, so I'm going to take this guy and I'm going to pinch a little bit off. Well, no, I'll just leave it together for right now. All right, so we're going to roll it up. So what the goal for rolling this is similar to when you're doing pottery. You roll a little bit and turn it. We're trying to roll this pretty thin because since we are don't want to use a ton of clay, so you can see how thick I have it here compared to a pencil. So it's thinner than a pencil already. We're going to want to go even thinner. Now the thinner it goes, the harder it is to work with. And see, sometimes you'll see what happens. See, it sticks to your rolling pin. That's okay. Gently peel it off. Give it one roll. See, I'm not rolling really fast. I'm just going to roll nice and slow. Peel it off. Roll this way. Carefully peel it off. As it gets thinner and thinner, you have to be extra careful. Sometimes a little bit will stick onto your rolling pin here. We'll scrape that off and add it in there. And so now you can see how thin we're getting it. This is a pretty good thickness to work on, right? Something about like that. You can see I didn't mention I just had probably 2 ounces of clay here. And so it completely depends on the scale of what you're trying to make. So what we're going to do is to make a tower, is what I was going to work on to start off with. You're going to want to cut it just like you're making a cup in pottery. So you want it relatively long for how tall you're going to make it. So we're actually going to do the exact same thing. So we're going to cut the bottom off. Right, so we have one flat edge. Oops, pull it off. There we go. Right, cut the bottom off. Any of you who have done pottery will recognize this method. We're going to coil it together. We're going to think about our height here, about right there. Right, that looks pretty good. And now you want to put, if you're going to cut both of these pieces together, like we want to cut this down to get it level, make sure you're pinching it together with your fingers, because this paper clay doesn't stick nearly as well as the clay that we use in class. So we're going to be about, actually I'm going to make it a little skinnier. So we're going to be about there. So you can see how tall it is. So I'm pinching it with one finger on the inside, one finger on the outside to sort of hold it together, because if I don't do that, it won't cut very easily. I'm just going to take a knife and go straight down through both pieces. Right, see, I went straight down through both pieces. So I have a piece on the outside, a piece on the inside already fell out. So here it is. You can see it started to pull away a little bit, so it tore a little bit down there at the bottom. We'll patch that, don't worry about that. See how it joins up now. And now what you're going to do is take your knife and mark your height. So see how I marked on both sides. Now I can unroll it flat. And my knife is long enough that I can line up here, line up my mark there, and just press. Cut that off. Now you can see my ragged edge from my bad cut. I'm just going to take and I'm going to cut that straight. So now we have, there, we'll get it right in the middle. There we go. So now we have a rectangle. And now you can see how this joins together like that for our tower. Now, before we get to our tower, I'm going to save this piece, and that's going to be a roof. And then you can do, well, maybe I'll just crunch all these together. So I'm going to scrunch all these together because my tower is going to be on an island. So I'll get those a little bit wet. Scrunch these all together. So the scraps are really easy to use. Just add a little bit of water, scrunch them together. See, we're just mushing it up. All right, so now I'm going to make, I want to have it be a little craggy, a little rough to it. So I'm going to pinch it and pull it. Right, so there's my island. And then my tower is going to sit on my island, right? So it'll be like that. So for when you're doing long, skinny pieces like this, it really is a lot easier to use a brush to get your water on there as opposed to any other method. So we're going to get plenty of water on there on both sides. And then see how I have my finger in there? My finger in there, I'm going to overlap it just a touch and pinch. You really want to overlap this. You don't want to butt it together. You really need to pinch it. I'm pinching it together. Right? Because if you're not careful, they'll split apart. You really need to have pressure on the inside and pressure on the outside to get those to stick together. They really want to pull apart until you get a lot of pressure on them. Right? When you do that, it'll change. The top won't be exactly flat anymore. It's okay. Now with my finger in there, I'm going to take my knife. I'm going to push against my inside finger. I'm pushing across the seam this way. Right? So, and you can see I'm not doing very well there because my finger doesn't reach all the way to the end. So it's all the way down here. So it works better there. Work back and forth. Really seal that up. See how I'm doing gentle pressure, but lots of repetition. That's what you want. And now I'm going to have to flip it around and get to do the other side. All right, and now I'm going to leave one on the bottom, and you'll see why in a second. And then the top I'm going to cut flat. Right, so I have a flat top. On the inside, you can still see the overlap. I'm not concerned about that. We won't see that. The reason why I left that little bit on the bottom is I thought it might be fun to make an impression, make it droop down, and it'll fit on there. Right, so now we have our little island. Again, we're going to take the brush. This one I'm going to put on the island to get the water. And from the top, I'm going to gently push. You see, if you just gently push a little bit, so it doesn't stay on, you really got to wiggle and work and press. Gentle. See, I don't want to press too hard because it's going to collapse out. So, and then, see, yeah, so I finally got that on there. Right, so we have it on there like that. Then I'm just going to take a little bit and work around the bottom edge. If you have it on there pretty well, you can actually just let it dry. And if it ever does fall off, you just glue it back on. No worry about it falling off and not being able to reattach it. All right, so we have that all the way around. And I like the little texture of that little bump out. You know, you can have it flat if you want to. And one thing, of course, you can see that's missing on the tower is any sort of decoration, windows or bricks or doors or any of that. I think that's, we're going to wait just a little bit and then add that in. I'll just dry it a little bit. But we do need a tower, or a top, excuse me. Get a little bit off right here. There are a couple ways you can make a top. Chunk off here. One is just to take your finger on the inside like a pinch pot. And this would be sort of like a thatched tower top, maybe something like that. Wasn't quite enough, so we'll pinch it a little bit thinner, right? Or a mushroom top or whatever. If you pinched it, just like a pinch pot, it's okay to have a little bit of a ragged edge. Maybe it needs a little bit more of an overhang. So I'm going to give a little bit more clay. Get it wet. Make it a little bit bigger. Pinch in there a little bit more. A little bit bigger of an overhang.
Hello.
Hey, Larry. Can I do it in about 20 minutes?
I come back.
All right. That'd be great.
Yeah.
Because I'm doing an online thing. So.
Okay. I'll come back.
All right. Thanks.
Yep.
Yep. All right. So I added a little bit more. On there. All right. So I kept pinching it. Now we got a little bit of an overhang. Right, so now we have a little bit of overhang on our tower. Looking pretty good. Now, of course, the other way you can do it, if you want a different kind of tower, is we're going to cut a little bit more clay, scrunch it up, roll it out. More. We want it pretty thin. You can roll this much bigger than you need. I'm sort of guessing. I may be wrong on my size here. Roll it out nice and thin again. All right. And to do this, for this tower, what we're going to do is for this top, we're going to slit it only halfway. And then we're going to slowly fold it. And see, as we fold it, it starts to make a cone. We can fold it more, and we get a steeper cone. We can fold it more, and get an even steeper cone. So this is another way to make our tower. And you can see the joint on the outside, and you can see there's a joint on the inside. But the inside we're not going to see, so I'm not going to worry about that. So for this one, I'll put a little bit of water underneath there. Pinch it. Right, I have my finger on the inside, finger on the outside. We're going to pinch it, smooth it. This one, since it's short, I'm just going to use my finger. Smooth, smooth, smooth. All right, so there we go. So we have a tower, and maybe I'll trim the roof, and maybe, well, let's try fit it first. You can see it's plenty big. Maybe we don't like that rough edge. So when I'm going to do this, I'm still going to have a finger on the inside. I'm just going to use the tip. And see how I'm holding it and pushing against my fingers nice and slow. We don't want to tear it if we can. You can see I tore it just a little bit right here. So my finger's under there. A little bit off. Walk around. A little bit more off. Work around. All right, so working all the way around real carefully with my knife, you get a much smoother edge. You can see how that one fits on. All right, now we're starting to look like we have a little bit of a tower, right? And so now if we want to, I always think that some vines look really good on a tower. So I'm going to roll this out really thin. Now this is starting to set up just a little bit because there's so much air around this. So it's starting to set up a little bit. So if you want to sort of outline what you want for a door, or maybe you can outline a little door right here. Maybe not cut it out unless we want the door open. So you can see a little bit of outline. Maybe make some lines. And one of the tricks, especially in animation, if you look, is that they will draw some of the texture in, but not all of the texture. Right? So you can see how you draw some of the texture in. It'll look like some bricks, but you don't have to do the entire thing if you don't want to. And so you can decorate it a little bit like that. Now let it stiffen just a little bit. And then get a tiny piece so tiny that it's probably going to break. And when it's that small, it gets really long. Now I have this little tiny piece, put it in the water. To attach it, I'm going to lay it flat. So I want to lay it flat. Again, my fingers aren't inside there. You see, until it gets pressed on, it sort of wants to pull off. So I'm not going to push on it because then it'll slide. I want to press real gently. Now it's starting to stick. And then to make sure it's extra stick, I'm just going to take the tip of my knife, make some leaves. Okay, it's going up. Do some on the other side. I like to add a lot of this texture once it's already on my pot because that helps attach it. So you can see some of the texture. If you want to add some extra ones, you can. All right, I'm going to take my lid, my roof, paint around the top there. I'm going to stick that on, just pressing real gently. Right, so you can start to see how we're going to start make this fun little mythical tower. You can have a vine, you can cut some windows, you can do all that sort of stuff. And you can keep adding on. So you can make other ones and you can attach them on and let them dry and then glue them on if you want to. One of the things that I was going to show you next was if you want to do straight things, because this is round, and since this is round, it has some strength to it when it's wet. But if you want to do flat things, they don't have much strength. And so by a flat thing, I mean that if we roll this real quick, maybe I'll add this roof to it, push it up. All right, let's roll this guy out. It's a little wet, so it's stuck to my rolling pin. Didn't fully mix in all the water that I added, so it sticks a little bit when you do that. So then if it is sticking to your rolling pin, you just want to apply a little bit gentler pressure. I don't press so hard. Let's do gentle pressure, work on it a little bit. And then it won't stick as much. All right, so the reason why I made this flat little piece like we did before is if you want to attach straight pieces together, right? Let's say I cut these and we want to attach these two together. See how wiggly they are. It's really hard to get them to stay really flexible. And it's hard to get them to stay together. So what I did is I cut a bunch of these and I let them dry for 4 hours like this. And I let them dry with a newspaper on top and a cutting board on top to keep them flat, because as they dry, they'll tend to curl up. So you can see I have my base. And you can see now as I hold it, right, it's not flexing very much. And I have some pieces here. Pull some off. And so even though they have some flex to them, right, I can bend them a little bit, they're not very floppy. So now all I have to do if I want to start building something is I'll take one of my walls, maybe this one, with water. Work it on there, right? And because it's really stiff and dry, you can see how it just sticks right on there without any trouble. So then I'm going to maybe make this one on 2 sides, and here I'm just dipping the edge in the water want to. I'm going to butt it up there. Press it nice and gentle. It's easier to get it to stick down than to the other piece because you can apply more pressure down. So you can see sort of how we're starting to build that. And as I moved it, it came off, so I'm going to paint a little bit more water underneath there. A little more pressure down, a little more pressure down. And then we use this knife pressing this direction. A little bit more water. Oh, it falls apart. There we go. Right, so you can start building this way. And this works a lot better for your square-sided pieces, and maybe I have, I'm going to throw in a little bit taller tower around the edge. You don't want to let these get super dry. Maybe I did let them get a touch dry so that they stick. Of course, the other option is you can make all these pieces, let them fully dry, and glue them together. Right, so you can start seeing how you can start building this way. By just stacking all these pieces up, you can make some crazy contraptions, you can make some crazy buildings, right? And you just start stacking up all your, right? You can make these very straight geometric things. That's not something you can make with fresh wet clay, right? To see if we're going to try and take one of these wet pieces and stick it on there, it's just going to droop, it's not going to hold, even though you can see how much thinner my dry piece is than my wet piece. It has a lot of strength in it because I've let it dry for 4 hours. So you can just start piecing these together. And if you want to, you can use dabs of glue and just stack them all together. And then you can cut pieces out, right? You can do all sorts of stuff so you can build with dry slabs that way if you want to build some other sorts of shapes. Let me see if I can pick this guy up. Since I didn't stick a lot of the pieces together, I just set them on there. Stick my knife under there. There we go. Right. So you can see how you can just start constructing some fun, interesting architectural shapes. You just roll those out really thin, cut the shapes you want, lay them on a piece of newspaper, put another newspaper on top, put a weight like a cutting board or another cookie sheet or whatever on top of them, and then you can put them together like that. All right, now the last method that I'm going to show you today is a fun one. It's the most time consuming. It's also probably the most intricate, and that is to cut out little bricks and start stacking. So when I first had my little island like this and started stacking, I had bricks that were that big. Those ended up being way too big. So I took those bricks and cut them into thirds. And now these little third-sized bricks are perfect for stacking up on my tower. Like that. All right, so how are we going to get started doing this? One of the things is the smaller your unit is, the more intricate it can be and the harder it is to place on there. So what we're going to do is we're going to cut chunk off. Use a rolling pin. And these we don't have to roll terribly thin. So this one I'm actually going to leave relatively thick. It doesn't have to be very thin, because we can make it thin by cutting it. So first I'll cut a straight edge like that. And then I'm going to look at the length of my brick, which is maybe about like that. And then I'll cut another one. I'll put another one. Oops. Right. Now I'll line those up on one edge. Trim flat. Then I'm going to make a bigger brick there, up there. All right, so So now you can see with one cut, I have these relatively big bricks. But now what you can do is you keep segmenting them smaller. And to keep things pretty accurate, it's best to cut in big sections than to cut those sections into little sections. So now that I have all these bricks, I'm going to cut these. If you want itsy bitsy bricks, you could cut these in half and then cut them in half again. Like I said, the smaller you get, the more intricate the things you can make, the longer it will take you, more delicate you have to be. You can see in half and half on little brick. There you have little bricks. You have a bigger brick. There you have the brick that you started with, right? So you can see the size. Now the bricks that I made here are actually about this size cut into thirds. And those were about the size of the bricks that I used to build my tower up. So let's go ahead and make a bunch of those. That's no good. Third. Third. Let's get another one. Well, grab them out of here. There we go. I'm going to cut these in thirds. So to get something that looks like a brick, you can sort of visualize how big a brick shape is. If you want to cut that brick smaller, if you cut it in half, your two halves aren't going to look like a brick anymore. So if you have something that sort of looks like a brick, you need to cut it in thirds to keep it looking like a brick in your smaller piece, right? See, by cutting in thirds, I still have the proportion of my brick. If I would cut it in half, it wouldn't be the proportion anymore. All right, so now I have a bunch of these guys. I'll hold this up so you can see. I'm going to take my paintbrush, paint water over it. Take a brick, stagger it just a little bit. There. Again, downward pressure is what will get it to stick. And then take another one. I'm going to stick it there. Get another one. Stick it there. In the dry air, it does start to dry out pretty quick, so I'm just putting some water on these guys. Another one. Water down here. That one on. Just gonna work all the way around. That one on. Grab one more. Stick that one on. I'm going to set it down just for a second so we can get some pressure on these. Put my finger on the inside. Make sure they're staying round. If you want to, you can even pinch them a little bit to make them butt into each other a little bit more. They work around. Trying to keep your tower straight. You don't want to be a leaning Tower of Pisa. Right. And so you can see I added another layer on, and you can see the look that you're going to get by doing those individual little bricks. It really looks like a stacked stone tower. Now, if you cut the bricks and let them dry a little bit, they won't squish as much, but they also won't stick quite as easily. And if you do have problems with your bricks coming off, then you can get a little water on your knife, work from the inside, and I'm just going around smoothing a lot of those joints. No, it's hard. I can't really show you. I'm supporting from the outside. See my finger supporting on the outside, and I'm pressing against that finger to make sure my bricks don't move. If you can see here a little bit, it's sort of hard to see, but you can see in here I started to smooth all those joints from the inside to really get them stuck on. But you can just keep stacking this. Now, in between, if you get tired of stacking these little guys, stick it in a bag so it doesn't dry out too much, because you don't want these bricks to get dry, because then they won't stick on as well. The key is just real gentle pressure. Stick it on there with plenty of water. You can just keep stacking them up as high as you want to go. And of course, the other option, like I said before, is you can cut all these bricks and let them completely dry. and then just stick them together with a little bit of glue like you're stacking a stone wall. You can certainly do that if you want to. All right, so then you can end up with a tower or a fire ring, or you can make it tumbled down ruins, and you can compare the smooth plaster tower with the tumbled down ruins next to it, or the straight-sided one that I did with the slightly dried pieces. So there you go. So you can make all these cool little fantasy structures or real life structures. And the more patient you are and the more intricate you want to become, you have to have more patience to do it, because the smaller you get, the more realistic it will look if you want it to look realistic. But you can even see already that we're starting to get a really good shape here. But you can get a really good shape here. You just have to let this dry before you cut anything out if you want to. And then, of course, painting comes at the end. One of the advantages of dry stacking them after you have already, if you let these completely dry, is you can paint each one and stick it down, and the drying paint will actually stick them together if you don't want to come back and paint these gray or whatever you want to do. So you can paint one each individually with the wet paint. You can stick it on there, or you can put a little dab of glue, or you can put that Mod Podge or whatever you want to stick those guys on. Experiment with different ways to stick those on. You can see how fun you can get all these little things. And remember, if you ever run out of clay, I have plenty more here. I'd love to see pictures of the things you're working on. All right, thanks for watching today. And I'll see you around in the store hopefully pretty soon. Thanks a lot.